Okay, I can't tell you how chronic this problem is, and I have multiple cases currently where this is the problem. But I had a whole lot last year too. I just think that in our current environment, I hate to say post-COVID, there's a lot of movement going around with families from all over the country to different locations, and so I'm seeing an increase in these problems, and including in Alabama. Mostly in Alabama, in Texas as well. New Mexico has a problem with people moving out. They don't have a problem necessarily with people moving in. Okay. So you recently moved to Alabama from West Virginia. Your daughter has had an IEP in place for a few years, and her school in West Virginia was always wonderful about all things IEP related. You're 3 weeks, now 4 weeks, into the school year in Alabama, and her IEP hasn't been spoken about or incorporated at all. She has started taking tests, and not one of the things put into place for test taking or comprehension is happening. I know I'm not going to include the school system. I'm not going to talk about their grading system because it would signify or let people know which school system you're in. I will say this: I lived in that school system and know the school system well. Okay, that is the school system that served my daughter's IEP. All right, before we moved somewhere else. Okay, so they know better, and this is they shouldn't be doing this. But I'll get into why. Okay. She's now had 2 tests where she's done terrible. I'm sure in large part due to her IEP not being utilized whatsoever. At what point do I stop with the grace period and go into the school and say it's been long enough? We need to have an IEP meeting, or start incorporating her IEP plan that worked from her previous school district. I really don't know what the laws or rights are and what we can and cannot demand or expect to happen at her new school. Okay, so let me explain this. Because I have a parent that moved from Washington State to Alabama. We are representing her child currently, and I can tell you she said the same thing. I just don't know the laws in Alabama. The laws in Alabama are the same as they are in Washington State. The laws in Alabama with regards to special education are the same as they were in West Virginia. Okay? You got to start. All states have to follow the IDEA, the special education law, all of them on this base level. The only differences between the states, guys, is there may be some nuanced differences to where there can be some enhancements. But I can tell you West Virginia and Alabama are not enhancing the federal base rules of the IDEA. So they're going to be almost identical, okay? So that also applies to what the rules are for out-of-state IEP transfers into another state. So in Alabama, you moved to Alabama with a West Virginia IEP. Now, the rules in Alabama is that the school has an option to do their own internal evaluation process to determine whether your child is eligible for an IEP under Alabama's their minimal standards for qualifying for an IEP. Now, don't let that scare you. They're very, very close with regards to, you can't be outside of those parameters to a large degree, okay? But there is some small nuances allowed by the federal, not the federal government, but as far as the Office of Special Education Programs within the Department of Education, okay? So there's 13 qualifying categories, and so let's say your child's a specific learning disability. How Alabama determines the threshold for qualifying for a specific learning disability may be slightly different than West Virginia, but we don't know that. So, but at the same time, the entire process is the same in both states. You follow the out-of-state IEP in a comparable fashion, okay? You must follow that out-of-state IEP in a comparable fashion. Not identical, comparable, which is almost identical, but in a case, let's say for a specific learning disability, it's not that hard to be identical. All right? Where the comparable comes in is for kids with more complex IEP needs, or even those that were getting third-party services paid for by the school system, that gets a little bit more complex. But not your accommodations and testing accommodations and specialized instruction in most typical IEPs. That just needs to be implemented. All right. Now, what's really concerning to me is that they haven't had a meeting with you. If they haven't had a meeting with you, then they're wrong. All right. They should have had a meeting before school started. The big thing is, when did they know that you came in with an IEP from West Virginia? That's number one. They should know, or they should have known, and I'm quite positive just because of how you asked the question, that they knew before school started that you were there and that your child has an IEP. Now, that should have triggered a meeting. That should have already triggered a meeting. Why? Because they needed to discuss how you expected it to be implemented inside the school. And then second, to get your consent, your written consent to conduct evaluations to start developing an Alabama IEP once they go through the rigmarole of ensuring that your child meets the Alabama minimal requirements for continued eligibility for an IEP. But to sit there and free float your child and not communicate with you, or not even acknowledge, hey, yeah, we're doing this, I think that you already know that they haven't, based upon the results of the two tests and the fact that you haven't been communicated with. They shouldn't do that. There is a process. They need to follow that process. It is not on you. You have zero responsibility under this law. They have 100% of the legal duty. You do not. The only thing that a parent needs to do is produce their child for school and provide consent. You don't even have to show up to IEP meetings, because there's a mechanism for them to have meetings without you present. I don't ever recommend that. Parents should always be an active part and have a meaningful role in the child's special education program. They're half of the team. But I'm saying that there's mechanisms to where if a parent isn't involved, there's a mechanism for them to continue to roll forward without the parent, as long as parent consent has been provided to provide these services. Okay? You've already done that. They should have had a meeting. You should have had to sign consent for them to do evaluations. All of these things should have been rolling a month ago. Why? Because they're wasting time. They're wasting time. And, you know, who knows what the hell they're doing, but your child is suffering in the meantime. And they are absolutely wrong for what they're doing. You are right. Great question. I appreciate you asking it. And then I'm going to make the same offer I have to other parents. This is one of those situations that it's fairly easy to fix, but it's going to be easier for me to fix for you than it would be for you to go about this on your own, because, you know, unfortunately, this has gone on for a while, meaning you're a full month into the school year. And if they've let this go this far, then you got a lot of mistakes, people scurrying and scrambling and doing things in a way that is too fast or not appropriate, not following the rules. You need this thing fixed, and you need to have it fixed quickly. And what I'm saying, in some of these cases, it just involves me just putting it on their radar, not even doing anything formal. It's just putting it on their radar and letting them know that I see you, so that this is handled quickly, okay, and you're not losing time. Good question. Good question.